Welcome to the SB Nation Selection Committee every single Monday during the college football season. We are here to broadcast, and by we, I mean the SB Nation College Football Super Friends, or at least a few of them. Bill Connolly, Jason Kirk, Spencer Hall, and Bud Elliott, everybody covering the sport a little bit differently in their own fun way. And our goal is to figure out right now, through all sorts of different parameters, who the best four teams in the country are if the playoff, this being the first season of the playoff, should start today. Gentlemen, you all look eager to discuss chaos. Bill Connolly, who is your top four as of this very moment?
It's fun. It's funny. You end up kind of clustering them together. I have no choice, no matter how much I enjoy telling Florida State fans how much I don't like their team.
Right.
I have no choice but to put Florida State in at this point because they keep not losing. Other teams lose, they keep not losing. I kind of have Baylor or TCU. I'm going to say Baylor. But either one of those, when they play, obviously the winner of that takes that second spot. And then the other two are some combination of the three SEC West schools right now: Auburn, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State. I love Mississippi State. They've proven everything they possibly can to me, and they've just continued to look really, really good. So I have them as one. And then at that point, I don't even know how you differentiate, but I'll go ahead and just say Auburn for now.
Fair enough. Spencer, who are your top four?
The top four at this point are nearly random for undefeated teams. I guess you have to put Florida State there. Because you got to talk about Florida State 24 hours a day, or I'm disrespecting them.
Yep, that's how that works.
Yeah, that's how that works.
SEC B Nation.
SEC.
Am I right?
Yeah.
Am I right, everybody?
That's right. I hear that bias. I hear it just in your accent. Because, Tallahassee is this enlightened, non-Southern place. That's totally demographically different from the rest of the universe. Anyway, Mississippi State at 2. Scary that they're the most complete team in college football right now, but hey, we're here. Number 3, I have to stay in the state until we can knock them out, and that would be Ole Miss. And then 4 is kind of a tricky spot. I chose a different team on Saturday, early Sunday morning, but I'll go ahead and just put Baylor in there for diversity because I'm not going to wait for the SEC West to knock itself out. I think Mississippi State's obviously the best team thus far with the best offensive weapon to anchor that entire offense around.
Right.
So, Auburn will have to wait.
Wow, fair enough. And Bud, before we hit record and started broadcasting, you were pretty insistent in talking to us that you still wanted to put Oregon 1, and you don't actually have Florida State in your top 4. So explain to everybody why that is.
Right, well, because the selection committee is going to account for injuries. They said, if you lose some important players, like all the offensive tackles that Oregon lost, you really can't hold them responsible for losing at home as a 24-point favorite. So, deserving number 1, no doubt there. I think that you have to lead off, though, with Alabama. Guys, they are still in the SEC West.
Yeah.
And that was a road game in the SEC West you lost. You only played 3 or 4 of them per year. They're number 1. Probably both Mississippi schools at this point.
Yep.
Both have played a non-LSU, non-South Carolina type SEC team or non-Arkansas, and it looked really good doing it. Auburn, I think, will definitely be in next week if they go on the road and beat Mississippi State, clearly. But so far, they've played, I think, what looks to be the 2 worst teams in the SEC West and really nobody else other than Kansas State. So those 2, Florida State, and then I'm going to go TCU because Baylor has not played anybody yet. Texas is not even guaranteed to make a bowl game, and their non-conference schedule was a total joke. So if we're looking just at what teams have wins over Power 5 teams and stuff like that, I think you probably have to go with TCU.
All right, and Jason, your top 4 at this very moment.
Hey, I'm going to go with I had Auburn in at number 4 last week. Bumped them up to number 1 just because I think they played the hardest schedule of any of the unbeaten teams. Obviously, there's a wide range of opinion there. Road win at Kansas State was actually their worst game of the year, and if that's your worst game, then you're doing pretty good. Defense has gotten vastly improved since last year when that was not a strength for them. Number 2, I have Ole Miss. I think they have the country's best defense so far. And the win against Alabama was impressive, but those 4 blowouts they put against bad teams, that included 3 likely bowl teams, with Memphis improving, with Boise State struggling but still looking, like a Mountain West contender. Number 3, I have Baylor. just because they've played 3 road games, they've destroyed everyone, their defense is vastly improved.
Right.
And they almost shut out Texas. Texas is down, but almost shut out Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And you're Baylor, that means something. In the 4th spot, there's a whole bunch of teams you could put there, especially since we're not really getting into the one-loss teams yet this time of year. But I'm going to put in FSU. The Oklahoma State win is slowly looking better and better, that being a close win and all. And the Clemson win, I guess it's looking better. Clemson lost to an SEC, a mark of shame, but not so much that it knocks out the Noles at this point.
Fair enough. I would have mine as a boring Florida State, Auburn, and the Mississippi schools, but I liked Bud's pick of TCU just in terms of impressive wins. That's right there, and it adds a little bit of variety. And I don't think 2 SEC schools will make it in. So I would actually have Mississippi State in ahead of Mississippi, and if I were to knock one out, it would probably be Mississippi. That home win, it feels kind of like cheating, Lane Kiffin in a big game, that to sort of use that as a big win, but it's still an enormous win. But TCU is right there. Who to you right now, Bud, is right on the outside and showed you that they were capable? Obviously, you had TCU in, but who right outside the top 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to you right now is showing themselves to be a top 4?
I think you got to look at Auburn. I mean, a lot of us had Auburn in. And
why is Auburn not in for you?
Because I think I'm more impressed with the win over A&M and the fashion that Mississippi State just stomped them, and Ole Miss's win over Alabama. How good is Kansas State? Is it like a 4 or 5 loss team? Is it a 2 or 3 loss team? Hard to tell at this point. And I don't think LSU's any good at all. I mean,
right.
the win by them is looking less and less impressive each week as we see Wisconsin just lost to Northwestern. That's not a very good job there by the Badgers. And their other 2 wins are Arkansas and Kansas State. So I think Auburn's right on the precipice there. If they beat Mississippi State, they might go to number 1 for me, especially because there's not a whole lot of big-time games this weekend going on there. Ole Miss.
And they'd be doing it on the road.
Right. Exactly. Baylor finally gets a chance to play a team that might make a bowl game for the Power 5 conferences. Welcome to Week 7, Baylor. They face TCU.
Fair enough. Jason, who's on the outside, maybe not Auburn, but who's on the outside for you, 6, 7, 8, somewhere in that range that you feel like is still within striking distance and can improve their lot in the next week or 2?
The 2 obvious big games this week, TCU, Baylor. I also thought about having TCU at 4th. And then Mississippi State, they're really not far away, and if they were to beat Auburn, then of course they'd be in. The problem with them is they had a little bit of an ugly game against UAB, gave up, I believe, 34 points to UAB, and you can't do that.
No.
And beating Texas A&M, well, that's good. It was, they destroyed Texas A&M, but I think we're starting to wonder how good Texas A&M is, just because really the thing they can most hang their hat on is blowing away South Carolina, and again, that's the SEC East. And then also Notre Dame, which is winning disgusting games, but winning them. Has beaten a good Stanford team, and has another decent win or 2. So let's not write off Notre Dame yet, just because they're really famous.
So we're penciling in the 2012 Notre Dame Fighting Irish as a team that we are counting on to keep doing what they're doing.
Lewis Nix is going to quarterback this team to a playoff victory.
Spencer, what was the most meaningful result this past weekend in terms of telling us who either is really good and deserving or does not belong in the top 4 ever?
I think the Ole Miss Alabama game, and I think it's to Bama, not to Ole. I mean, Ole Miss certainly deserves credit.
A single offensive touchdown.
And 3 points in the second half.
Yeah.
That's the other super damaging thing about this. I think this is me wanting to kill the emerging narrative that Alabama gave that game away. That's not true. Ole Miss literally pulled it out of their hands. Right? That's a great Ole Miss. This is an all-timer for Ole Miss in terms of overall defensive quality. Like, I'm going to go back and watch this game again just so I can watch Robert Nkemdiche on the line, because the highlights of him working against Alabama's offensive line are heinous. They're just filth in all directions. So I think I have the offensive identity to take on a defense like that at this point. They just don't. I don't know whether it's a matter of the quarterback not being able to handle the offense quite yet, I think Florida
Right.
was probably as uninspiring a test defensively, especially when you're giving up TDs for like 80 yards multiple times in a game. So there might have been a bit of irrational exuberance around this team. I'm pretty confident that they can fix a lot of that, but I think some of the problems they have are rooted in what they have along both lines. And I don't know if you can fix that totally. You can mitigate it. You can do a lot to make up for it, but I just don't think they're as mature along the offensive defensive lines as past Alabama teams have been, and that's an issue.
All right, Bill, a number of teams that I think we consider to be very, very good. And I don't know where this echo is coming from. Oh, we're going to put the echo. A number of really good one-loss teams became one-loss teams this past weekend. Which of those teams do you feel like, either ones that lost this weekend or before then, still have the best chance in terms of quality of play, quality of schedule, mitigating factors? Which team are you most confident in with a blemish?
Well, Oklahoma still gets Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and Baylor at home. So I'd say they're probably still the most likely Big 12 champion. They were allowed one loss, and you don't want to use your margin of error this early, but I think they're still probably in pretty good shape overall. So I mean, if they finish 11-1, it's hard to imagine an 11-1 Oklahoma team being left out. Beyond that, I mean, the thing Alabama has going for it is that there is no other Ole Miss defensive line on their schedule. There are a lot of good teams on their schedule, and they'll get tested in all sorts of different ways. But if the bar is simply set at they can't handle Ole Miss, that's fine because they won't have to again. So I would say they're still in pretty good shape overall. But I have to say Oklahoma has the best shot of finishing with one loss.
Is Dan muted for anybody else?
He is.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. I believe we have lost Dan
We have gone off the rails.
for the moment.
I agree with Oklahoma. I actually had Oklahoma in the playoff projections this week and heard some things about that. Baylor fans were pretty unhappy. And if we can't, if we would all have to name somebody of our own, I would add Michigan State back to the conversation, just because the schedule is light and free. After that scary Nebraska game, there's a big Ohio State game and then possibly another Nebraska game, but that's a very potential one-loss Michigan State team.
You mean Northwestern?
I can hear you now.
Champion Northwestern.
Yes, Big Ten champion Northwestern. Sorry.
I believe we have
I'm
Dan
back. Yeah, my computer's acting screwy. What did
Dan's
I miss?
offensive line collapsed and he bounced right back.
How dare you? What did I miss? What did we talk about?
Bill picked Oklahoma.
Yep.
Oklahoma. Okay. Spencer, to you mentioned the Ole Miss thing and that you're going to re-watch that. In terms of the one-loss teams that we did see go down.
I believe where Dan was going, because Dan has lost sound again, but I believe the question he was going to ask is, of the one-loss teams, the ones that we saw go down this past weekend, who stands the best chance of working their way back into the national title picture and back into the playoff? I think Jason's right. I think Michigan State, particularly if they do win that Big Ten championship game. And remember, I still think that's going to carry weight with people. This is still primarily decided by people, so I think we're vulnerable to they played a title game, so that's one more win. Michigan State can't avenge the Oregon loss, but they can tack on victories all the way, get a conference championship, and make a pretty compelling case, especially if they play as impressively as they're capable of playing. The problem is they tend to miss fourth quarters and make things more interesting than they should be. Another one-loss team that from this past weekend that I think can make their way back in, I think it is Alabama. I think Bill's right. I think that Alabama can easily work their way back in because of the schedule they play, because I think they have the best coaching staff in America, especially in terms of doing the little fixes, and in terms of I think what they need to do, which is developing Sims as a quarterback, which is something that Lane Kiffin's really good at. I think he still deserves credit for that. So I think this is an opportunity for them to get back in the hunt. I think it's an opportunity for them to do a lot of that talent development, little sort of nitpicky coaching stuff, and to do it against an SEC West slate, which I think is particularly favorable for them because LSU sucks a lot.
Yep.
That was the answer I had ready. It was the road games for Bama are LSU, Tennessee, Arkansas. That's it.
Fair enough. You can hear me now, I'm assuming, hopefully.
Hey, Dan.
Hey, I'm back. Cool. Okay, let's look forward to this weekend because we have, I mean, Bud mentioned that the slate wasn't as good as last weekend, which is probably true, but there are a number of ranked matchups. So to you, Jason, I guess, first of all, which matchup do you think could affect things the most? Which matchup do you feel most confident in the results separating a couple teams?
Well, the obvious one is Auburn-Mississippi State, just because I believe both of those teams will be in our composite rankings once we sort that out. So, that's probably an elimination game for one of them, and the other one is going to jump up a spot or two. Confidence in those, I am pretty confident in Auburn. Mississippi State is really good, very good defense, but
right.
I just think Auburn's the best team in the country right now. And that never goes wrong, thinking a team is the best team in the country.
Nope. Bill, what is this weekend about for you?
Well, I mean, that one obviously, but TCU-Baylor really is a huge game because, among other things, if Oklahoma wins out and gets to 11-1, they better hope TCU's not also 11-1. If TCU is in position to steal that spot now without having to win in Norman, that's a really, really big game. I mean, there are other really impressive games, but that's has to be at the top of the list. Baylor and TCU have both passed with flying colors every test they've been given. Obviously, Baylor hasn't had any really tough tests yet, but that's maybe not a complete elimination game, but it's close.
Spencer, question to you.
Well, since I am the Pac-12 homer on this discussion panel, I'll have to go to the knockout game, which is Oregon at UCLA. That's a serious recovery game for Oregon to see if they can bounce back from a painful loss that they do get extra days to recover from because they played on Thursday. UCLA's in the same position. Lost a crippling game to Utah late. Yeah. If you watch, too, they were run over. There was the last quarter of that game was Utah with one game plan, and that was to go that way. And UCLA let them. So that's a crucial game in the Pac-12, I think, especially in terms of who we're going to take into the playoff if anyone does come out of the Pac-12 into the playoff, right? Because both teams have one loss at this point.
Bud, your thoughts about the weekend?
Yeah, I think you got to look at Ole Miss at A&M, which is a top 3 versus top 15 matchup, but by most of the polls here, where number 15 or whatever A&M got dropped to is actually favored over Ole Miss now by a field goal on the Vegas line. So Sports Illustrated may have chosen a pretty good week to put Mississippi on the cover because if you waited a week, might not work so well.
Fair enough. Where do you see the most movement long term? Obviously, the SEC West and the Pac-12 are going to continue to beat themselves, but who do you think is the biggest beneficiary of what I think we feel like is going to be sort of a cannibalistic second half of the season, Jason?
Florida State, without question. They have the Notre Dame game and Georgia Tech or Pitt or Virginia Tech or whatever, and that's just about it. All they have to do is just keep beating teams by multiple scores, and they are in without any concerns at all with the name brand, with the coming in with the top ranking, with the winning streak and all that. This is setting up really, really nicely for Seminole fans, and they might even be able to make it in with one loss at this point. Not at this point, but projecting from this point.
Just got to get past Georgia Tech and Paul Johnson in that ACC championship game.
Spencer, who do you feel like is going to be the biggest beneficiary of the cannibalism?
Thus far, I think it would be a team that's taken an early loss, a team that would otherwise look strong. I think Michigan State can benefit because I think Michigan pretty much whacks the rest of its schedule, provided they work on that fourth quarter thing.
Yeah.
I think additionally, another team that might be able to benefit, as long as Alabama doesn't get run over by Arkansas, they're still cruising as well into a spot where I think they can be really successful. I could also say Oklahoma because it's the Big 12. They don't have to worry about that title game thing.
Okay.
But one more team actually. What was that?
What day?
I'm coming in and out of volume, so I'm trying to read people's lips at certain points to see when they stop talking. Bud, who do you think jumps in? I can hear you now.
To Spencer's point about Georgia Tech, you guys ever watch that TV show, Name That Tune? It's like I can name that tune in 5 notes or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see Jimbo Fisher play I can beat Georgia Tech with X number of plays. Like just to see how ballsy he would be here. It's like I can beat Tech with 27 offensive play calls. You know what I mean? That would be great. As to the question, though, I think Alabama is going to be helped by its home schedule. That's still a good team. They have some flaws. I think everybody does this year. Nobody's really standing out to me as a just super dominant power. And I think because of that, teams that just continue to win are probably going to be the ones. And Alabama looks very set up to win ball games.
All right. I'm not hearing anybody.
That's
Jason,
okay.
do you have a question for people? Because I don't. Because I can't hear responses to jump on. Oh, now I can.
Let's go to Bill C.
Bill C, what do you have?
I feel bad pointing this out, but you do realize that Ohio State can beat Michigan State and finish 12-1 too, right?
Nope.
It's on the table.
Yeah.
It's going to happen, and we really probably need to accept it now. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
Preposterous.
I have the antidote for you already, which is the Big Ten sucks. That's all you'll hear. It doesn't matter. Like if they end up going 12-1, they'll be like, oh, but Big Ten.
And they lost to a 6-6 Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
Just saying.
All right.
It's still
and
It's like the antidote is truth.
We are talking just about.
I can't hear anything.
We all know SEC West is.
I literally can hear nothing. This
Top
is,
4, 5, 6 teams. When teams lose.
There's Jason.
Oh.
There's Bill.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we're
There's
listening to Bill. Bill's
There's
dropping
Bud.
the truth.
I'm gonna get a new computer.
That's all right. Dan, we're gonna sub in for you here and make sure that we keep the
Who's got a
conversation.
food question? Let's
Well,
do
now
that.
I can hear you. Now I can hear you.
Oh, okay, all right.
But it just keeps cutting in and out. So
Let's
I'm gonna-
do the food question thing.
let's do the food question thing. We're not even gonna ask Spencer this question because it completely doesn't apply to him. But today on Easy Call, I went to a place called the Melt Shop, which has grilled cheese sandwiches, which got me thinking. The best 3 melty cheesed dishes that you eat. Bill, what are the best 3 melty cheese? I had mine as pizza, a melty sandwich of some sort, grilled cheese or patty melts, and then nachos. Bill?
Well, I have a 3-year-old, so basically all we eat are grilled cheese, nachos, and, well, some variation of mac and cheese. So at this point, I can't really compute anything that goes beyond those 3 things. So I'll say grilled cheese is number 1, and
Okay.
everything else is after that.
Jason, your top 3 melty cheese.
I'm not a huge mac and cheese fan, but I like those other 2. I'll sub in pizza. I ate an entire pizza yesterday.
What
These
toppings?
things happen. It was pineapple and it was Canadian bacon.
You feel good about it?
Not at the time, but I felt great going in.
All right. Bud,
bad
your top
after.
3.
Pizza, nachos, and not a huge mac and cheese guy, so I guess grilled cheese is a good staple. It's like Florida State. Sometimes you just got to leave it number 1. Don't mess with the best.
I can't hear anything.
All
I
right.
hear nothing. I hear nothing. So this
We
is
hear
on
you,
time,
Dan.
and Spencer has told. We'll ask Spencer next time his top 3. Actually, Spencer, I'll let you conclude with your top 3 places in Southern California that you would live.
A question I can answer. One would be
Yeah.
the Hearst Mansion, the Hearst Castle. I'm going to go
Yep.
with that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The Goldstein House. That's Jimmy Goldstein's house. You may remember it from The Big Lebowski,
Yep.
or from the Feds Watching video.
Okay.
By 2 Chainz. That's also used in that movie as well. And then the third place I'd live in California, probably wherever they modeled Trevor's hideout in Grand Theft Auto 5.
Mm.
So like some meth baron's nest or den out in the Inland Empire, somewhere out there.
Fair enough.
Good choice.
I have no audio. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to conclude this. It appears that you guys can hear me. So I'm going to conclude this episode and throw my computer out an 8th floor window here in Midtown Manhattan. But
Go
to
Gators.
everybody for watching, thank you very much for watching. I guarantee you I will have more of a stranglehold on this conversation next week. Now I can hear things, I think. But thank you for watching the selection committee. Be sure to check out SB Nation live every Saturday, all day Saturday, to be chatting with all of your best SB Nation friends. And we will see you this channel next week. See you then.